Good morning, Open Table. Welcome to our virtual service. We are so glad that you're here with us. We're already halfway through September. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but I hope that so far this month is going well for you and that you've had a good week. Let's prepare our hearts for worship by reading Psalm 103 together. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless God's holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all God's benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles.
Sing the wondrous love of Jesus, sing his mercy and his grace. In the mansions bright and blessed, he'll prepare for us a place. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. Honor to the prize before us, soon his beauty we'll behold. Soon the pearly gates will open, we shall tread the streets of gold. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory.
Hey everybody, happy Sunday to you out there. Here we are again meeting online. Hopefully we'll be able to be together sometime soon. Today we are journeying into this parable of the unmerciful servant. And I'm sure you have heard it many times if you've been around the church. But have you ever thought to ask, what's really going on here? Because this is just a weird parable that makes no sense. Before we get into that, I was thinking this week, I was working in my garden, and I remember this moment at the beginning of the year when I was tending my garden. I had planted these wildflowers a couple of years ago for the butterflies, and this year particularly, they blew up. I mean, my whole garden was just wildflowers almost. And at the beginning of the year, I was there and I had this choice to make. Are these wildflowers getting in the way of what I want to do here? My tomatoes and my cucumbers? But I looked and I saw the butterflies and the bees and how they enjoyed them. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to leave my wildflowers right here this year because maybe somebody needs them. Maybe these little creatures need them more than I need tomatoes, more than I need a cucumber. And all throughout the year, my garden was full of butterflies. It was this beautiful garden of life in so many ways. And you know what happened? They actually helped my tomatoes. They helped my cucumbers. They provided needed shade. And I reflected back on that and thought, wow, you know what? If I'd have done my natural sort of way of doing things in life, I would have pulled them up and thrown them out. But instead, I looked at them with gratitude and opportunity. I saw them as an opportunity to be grateful for what my garden had given me. And it was beautiful, butterflies and beautiful bees all year round. As we think about forgiveness this week, I think the pathway into forgiveness is gratitude. But a lot of times we aren't grateful for what we have, right? Because life is hard and stressful and we are always striving and always running and always doing and always battling. We see what we lack. We see what we've lost instead of what God and the world has given us. How are we going to be grateful? How do we open our eyes up to being grateful so that we can open up our eyes to the possibility of forgiveness, of seeing someone else as created in the image of God and seeing and being grateful for the other person's life, even if it's not what we expected, even if it's not what we wanted, even if we see it as a little bit inconvenient to us, maybe we still need to be grateful for it. Today, this parable begins this way. And so you got to know about the parables. Parables are difficult to understand because they're meant to be difficult to understand. Lots of times we read them and we just think, well, we just like here, Jesus is very clear. This is what it means. A plus B equals C. But the parables are not like that at all. The parables are more like these stories that leave you speechless. There's stories. Have you anyone ever told you a story like that and it's meant to be a teaching and you walk away and you're like, I have no idea what that meant until later on, and then something happens and then you remember the parable, you remember the story, and you're like, that's what they were saying. At first blush, this story seems to make a lot of sense, but if you get down and dig into it, it doesn't make any sense. It contradicts itself. It's difficult. Here it is in Matthew 18. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive someone who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Peter's asking Jesus about the world of limited forgiveness, which, honestly, is limited forgiveness really forgiveness at all? Not really. It is a world in which we control. A world in which we say, you are good or you are not. A world that says, like, I can forgive you, I've got all the power, and I can forgive you up to 7 times, and then like, well, I'm done with you. This is a world that we live in. This is the world that Peter lived in. The world of limited forgiveness. Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Or some translations read 70 times 7. Basically, Jesus here is saying, no, don't live in the world of limited forgiveness. I want to show you the world of unlimited forgiveness. The world where anything is possible because everything is always forgiven. So Jesus sets up that statement, but then Jesus begins to tell this parable, which at first blush seems like he's supporting what he said about unlimited forgiveness, but it doesn't. It actually contradicts it. So what's going on here, we must ask. The first thing we must understand about the parables is lots of times we think when Jesus talks about the king in a parable, that means God, but it doesn't. Oftentimes Jesus uses the king as an example of like real life kings and how they are unjust and how they are unmerciful and how they are vengeful. So we don't equate the king here with God, and we shouldn't do that with really any of the parables. He says, therefore, the kingdom of heaven, now hold on here. Maybe something else is going on here. I want you to think and open your mind. Therefore, the kingdom of God, heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began to settle, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had to be sold and repay the debt. This is the way the world works. So the parable begins with this idea, this is the way the world works. Now, this king was extremely wealthy, and this man who owed him money was not just some little servant. This was probably a top-level bureaucrat who made business happen for the king, because this amount is probably like what we would think of $100 million today. So if somebody came and like, I owed you $100 million, that means like I've had the capacity to make that money. I've lost it in some way or not done my job. The servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master, the king, took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. Like this is a remarkable moment where this king, this master, opens the door up to pave a new pathway for this world. Now, so this is not just one person, individual. Like this would have been huge in terms of societal removal of debts, because this bureaucrat, this top-level servant, would have had people under him, and he would have owed so much money. The forgiveness of his debt would have paved the way for forgiveness of so many other people in society. Jesus is telling a world here, giving us an example of a world that's possible if the leadership would begin to forgive debts. He's opening the door to unlimited forgiveness. But when the servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 bags of silver coins. Still a lot, but not nearly as much. He grabbed him and began to choke him and say, "Pay back what you owe me," he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, "Be patient with me and I will pay you back." The exact same response. But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed. The other servants were greatly distressed. Why were the other servants greatly distressed? Because they had seen what the master, the king, did. And now how the top-level bureaucrat was acting. The top-level bureaucrat was not acting as the king, as the master acted. Now this is a power struggle. This is saying who's really in charge here. Is the kingdom edict? Is the policy going to be forgiveness? Well, if the master makes a policy of forgiveness, but then those under the master still collect the debts, it makes the master look like a fool, out of control, have no authority here. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. "You wicked servant," he said, "I canceled all your debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servants as I had on you?" In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he could pay back all he owed. This is the way the world works, Jesus is saying. This is the way that the world system works. Because if someone tries to forgive debts, then the system will begin to work in opposition to that. Because we're not framed in a world of unlimited forgiveness. We're not framed in a world where there can just be forgiveness. We live in a world of debt. We live in a world of pain. So how then do we operate? This parable is not about what is right or what God is like. This parable is asking the question, what is the world like? And what world are you going to live in? Because Jesus is unlocking a new door. Then something very strange at the end, Jesus says, "This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive a brother or sister from your heart." Oh my. Like, wait a minute. So Jesus is talking about unlimited forgiveness, talking about how we should operate in the world, and then says, if you don't forgive each other from your heart, my heavenly Father is going to torture you and throw you into prison until you can pay your debt. What is going on here? That makes no sense. That sounds more like a punchline. That sounds more like this way of like subversive storytelling to open us up to the idea of like, whoa, what world are we living in? Is that really God? Is that what God is like? It is like, I see parents, and I was this way as an early parent. I was young and didn't really know how to parent. And my son, he gets to that age, 2 or 3, and he'd hit other people. And when I was younger, like, well, what do? I either get mad, and I am like, I hit my son. I spank my son. Like, you don't hit. I'm going to spank you to show you that you shouldn't hit anybody. Like, that's screwed up. Like, honestly. So I'm gonna teach you not to hit people by hitting you. As a nation, I'm going to teach you not to invade another country by invading your country. Like, this is oftentimes how the world works, but it's no good. It's a system that is built on behavior modification through fear and force, not through love, not through genuine forgiveness. If we're worried that God is going to punish us if we don't forgive somebody else, then are we really forgiving anybody else? Or are we just afraid that we're going to go to hell? And so therefore we say, oh, I forgive you. I just don't want to go to hell. I don't want God's wrath upon me. Like that whole system is messed up. But that's a system that we get. That's how we create God in our image if we live into the scenario of limited forgiveness. When we hurt each other, when we don't forgive one another, when we hold debts over people. It's like when I was in Russia, living in Russia, we worked in orphanages. And there in the orphanages, like, it was a different world. It was like Lord of the Flies. I mean, these kids who were abandoned, many of them beaten and abused, all came together. And there weren't that many adults there. They were very limited budgets and only a handful of adults. They're not nearly enough. They got no care. They got no sympathy. They had no love. And so they created this little society in the orphanages where the older kids would disciple the younger kids in the way of the orphanage. They would teach them how to go about their daily life. And their daily life was brutal. It was dog eat dog. There was no forgiveness and there was no love. And the younger kids had to pay homage to the older kids, and the older kids ruled the roost, and they would fight fist by fist. They would hurt each other. They would abuse each other. They would humiliate and shame one another. all to get what they wanted. So the powerful, the older kids, could stay in power. And then when the younger kids got up old enough, they would be the same way because that's the way that they've learned. And as you come in and you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much pain here. There's so much suffering here. This is not, you got to get out of this way. This is just too much. No one should live like this. But really, if we panned back the camera of the society that we live in and we were able to look at it with objective eyes, I think we'd see the same way. The names have changed, the actors are different, but it's all the same. Those in power teaching those of us how to navigate this system that we're in. We got to be strong. We got to be powerful. Don't forgive. Take what you can. Step on anybody. It doesn't matter of your own happiness. It doesn't matter of your own joy. All that matters is winning and success and more and more and more. And if anybody gets in your way or if anybody disagrees with you, then punish them in whatever way you can, either through shame or through the judicial system or through war or whatever it is. Punish them. That is the way of the world. Jesus is saying this is the way of the world. This is the way of limited forgiveness. Because we don't genuinely believe that people should be debt-free. We hold things against them, don't we? We see their differences as some debt that is owed to us. We see ourselves as having done so much for other people, and when people don't respond in the same way that we hope that they would, we pull back, we withhold resources. We say, well, you need to change in order to get our love, to get our resources. Nations do this all the time, right? They don't freely give resources, don't freely give resources to communities. They say, well, if you do certain things, then we will help you out. Behavior modification through the fear of punishment. Behavior modification through the fear of punishment, not forgiveness. This parable is strange. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It seems to contradict one another. But I believe what Jesus is doing here is telling this story about the way the world works. And if we live into the way the world works, this is how we will see God working. But we know that God is not going to punish us if we withhold forgiveness because like lots of times we can't even give forgiveness. We are broken in our heart. We are messed up people. And so God's going to punish us for that? No. The rest of Jesus' ministry shows us that Jesus actually takes the debt onto Jesus himself in order to free us of our debt. And this is forgiveness. Forgiveness comes with a price. It causes hurt in us. We have to give something up when we forgive. We have to let go of our vengeance. We have let go of our need to be repaid. This first master who repaid the debt of $100 million, that cost him something greatly. He let go. He absorbed the loss. He wrote it off on his books. The price of being generous, the way that I want to lead. What if the Messiah came and nothing changed? If you've read the Brothers Karamazov, there's this beautiful little chapter in there called The Grand Inquisitor, and it's really a classic of literature. Just itself, you can actually buy a pamphlet of The Grand Inquisitor just on its own because it's so good. He tells a story of during the Spanish Inquisition that Jesus came and that the church arrested Jesus and they put Jesus in prison. And the leader, the bishop of the area came to Jesus like, what are you doing? Why are you feeding people? Why are you forgiving people? Why are you loving people? Why are you healing people? Well, don't you realize who's in charge here? What are you doing? And Jesus, the remarkable thing is Jesus doesn't respond in any way to the bishop. All Jesus does is reach through the cell and give a kiss to the bishop. Jesus absorbs. Jesus takes the debt. Jesus is showing us another way that we can live. Because the way that we are currently living is like that of an orphanage. It's like Lord of the Flies, kill and be killed, or eat or be eaten. Force will get you what you want. Our whole judicial system is based on unforgiveness, isn't it? Kids who have marijuana found on them go to prison for 30 years. People of color suffer disproportionately because the eyes of the law are not blind. They see clearly. Nations, we see this. If you don't do what we want, well, we're more powerful and we'll invade you. You must be scared of us because of our massive technology. We are people who are living like the Messiah never came. Does it make any difference to us that we have been forgiven? Why must we kill somebody? Why must we have death row or the death penalty? What is it in us that needs such vengeance? That we must eliminate the other person because, yes, they did something horrible to us and that caused us insurmountable pain that will never be taken away. But why can't we forgive? Because the way of the orphanage says don't forgive. Because if you do, you will lose. If you do, you will be weak. If you do, you will not thrive. If you do, you will fail. So how many times did I forgive my brother, Jesus? 7? I think we live in a 7 forgiveness world, don't we? But Jesus here is trying to help us to understand. If you live in this 7 forgiveness world, here's what you're going to get. You're just going to get wrath upon yourself. You're just going to get pain upon yourself. You're just going to get hurt upon yourself. That's the way. And you're going to see God as a punisher. Therefore, you are going to punish others because we do what we believe God is. But Jesus is saying through his whole life, I'm paving the way for another possibility, another future, unlimited forgiveness, debt release. And Jesus showed that by taking the debt upon himself, taking the punishment and the pain of his enemies, those who were out to get him, those who were out to destroy him, those who hated him. He took the death, the injustice, the pain, the hurt, the debt, the suffering of all of humanity and said, I will take it to set you free. Today, what are we going to do with this parable? What are we going to do with the life of Jesus? That's our fundamental question as Christians, right? Are we going to still live in the rules of the orphanage? Or are we going to get out of that and see there's another world out here? All that's causing us suffering. But there's a world full of possibility of butterflies and flowers and bees, so to speak. We just have to open our eyes to it and be grateful for the possibility. Yes, it will change our plans. Yes, it will cost us something. Yes, it will be different. But can we open up our hearts to be generous, to be thankful for what is going on, to be thankful for those people, even when some people who hurt us, to be like, there's the image of God is still on them. I forgive you. Today, who do you need to forgive? Who are you holding debt for? That pain is only destroying your heart. It is only taking away your humanity. Today, may we be people who live as if Jesus actually came. May we be people who live in the unlimited resource of forgiveness. May we be people who are generous and grateful to see that the world is good, that people are good. We all have problems, but God is at work. He's going to surprise us. And let us be people who are committed to a world of unlimited forgiveness, of debt release, not only in our personal lives, but in society too. You're forgiven. You are free. You owe no debt. God says, you owe no debt. Amen.
Simple psalm says, any day now, any day now, the Lord is gonna do just what He said, and I don't know how. All I know is any day now, the Lord is gonna do day now. Any day now, the Lord is gonna do just what He said. I don't know how, all I know is any day now, the Lord has gotta do just what He said. One more time, you got it. Any day now. Any day now, the Lord is gonna do just what He said. And I don't know how, all I know is any day now, the Lord is gonna do just what He said. So I'll be watching and waiting, anticipating, 'cause I know He will do what He said He would do. So by faith I'm watching, waiting, I'm anticipating, 'cause I know He will do what He said He would do. Yes, we are watching by faith, waiting, anticipating, 'cause we know He will do what He said He would do. We are watching, still waiting, yet anticipating. We know He will do what He said He would do. Can we just stay right there? We know He will do what He said He would do. It may take a little time, but we know He will do what He said He would do concerning everything concerning you. We know He will do what He said He would do. So any day now, any day now, the Lord is gonna do just what He said. We don't know how, all we know is any day now, the Lord is gonna do just what He said. Any day now.
Thanks for joining us again here today. I pray for you so often, and I'm so thankful for what God is doing here in this church, in your life. In the midst of the craziness, God is still at work. So let's see those flowers bloom. Maybe it surprise us. Let's look for them. Let's look with grateful hearts today. Please remember to continue your giving. Thank you so much for your generosity and your continued giving to the church. It allows us to do the work of Christ in the world, to remind people of forgiveness, to remind people of justice, to remind people of love, and live into that. So may you go now, and may you live as if you were forgiven. May you live in the unlimited resource of forgiveness, the 70 times 7 world of life. And may you be covered in God's debt-free love. May you live in joy and gratefulness to what God has done for you and will do. Hope you have a great week. See you soon.